Even if you're the biggest celebrity influencer dentist out there, you're not going to make money off of being an influencer. You probably won't even get many new patients through that. It's just how it is. You're just a celebrity. So you still have to work to get patients to your dental practice.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raving Patients Podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Dr. Len Tao. First off, I want to thank both of my sponsors, the Doc Sites and Dental Intelligence, for their support, allowing me to come to your inbox or your podcast station all around the world every single week for the past 6 seasons. Today's episode is titled The Future of Dentistry, Branding, Technology, and Mindset. And I'm really excited to have a good friend of mine in the industry. We're both holding our own meetings across the country. We're both key opinion leaders. She more on the hygiene side, I'm more on the dental side. But please welcome to the Raving Patients Podcast, and I said it before, the Melissa Turner. Melissa, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Len, thank you for having me, and thanks to everyone who is listening.
So let me go ahead and read your bio, so everybody who doesn't know who you are, and I think in this day and age, if they don't know who Melissa Turner is, I think they have to be under a rock or something, because you've got your hand in so many different things in a good way, okay? So a 20-year veteran dental hygienist and founder, Melissa Turner is a sought-after executive consultant, dynamic speaker, and top millennial content creator. Behind some of the most innovative brands in the industry, she partners with companies of all sizes, from pre-seed startups to billion-dollar international brands, on brand strategy and product growth. Turner's combined experience behind the scenes in the boardroom, on the front lines as a clinician, as a public-facing influencer, allows her unique insight into future industry trends. She is a founder and founding board member of multiple companies and refers to as a fresh force of change, representing a new generation in dentistry with a focus on transforming the future through innovative technology, inclusion, and practitioner well-being. So that is your bio. I know you have so many other things you're doing, but I didn't want to read it myself. So why don't you expand on your bio a little bit, talk about your history, how you got involved in the influencer space, those types of things.
Okay, well, that's a great place to start. It sounds like I'm doing a lot of things. And even you said it, Len. You're like, you're doing a lot of things. But they're really, really all combined into one kind of like a foundational legacy, whatever you want to call it, right? I want to make dentistry better, not just for the patient, but for us as the providers as well. And I know like I'm sure there's so many changes that you have seen, Len, and that you see coming down the line in dentistry. And that's kind of where I am. I feel like, I was clinical for a long time. I still am a little bit, but I just was really antsy in the chair. And I thought there's got to be something better, like something that'll help, harness my creative outlet. And I was always into branding and design and kind of, I had a blog back when blogs were really new, right? One of those. It was a non-dental blog. Do not look it up because it is embarrassing now. So we'll just leave it at that. But it's one of those things where if we can see the change that's coming down the line as a leader in whatever industry we are, it's almost our duty. It's a call of duty for us to, make it happen or help usher in that change or whatever is happening. So whether it's the Mobile and Teledentistry conference that I host in March, or whether it's Denobi Awards, or working on brand strategy for either dental product and service companies or for dental practices, all of that has the future in mind. And it's like, okay, these changes are coming. Let me help you get there faster, right? Like so that we can all be better at what we do. So I don't know. Did that even answer your question, Len?
Well, it did in a roundabout way. And that's what these podcasts are about. We're just kind of jamming along and asking questions, and however it goes, it goes. I mean, that's what these are about. So
it just goes.
Yeah, it just goes. So, I'm curious, we were just at the SCN meeting in Nashville, and you were on a panel with Sonia and I think Avi and someone else, about industry trends and influencer status and, talking about being an influencer. And I'm curious your perspective on things, how you perceive yourself. I'm thought of as an influencer, and I don't know if I'm an influencer more than just an authority figure. I think they're a little bit of a different thing. But I'm curious, before we get into some of the other content, I'm curious your thoughts on that direction, because everybody talks about influencer marketing. That, I'm obviously, I see your Instagram posts and the things you do in your scrubs and stuff like that. And people obviously follow you. And, I think you just did one on the fluoride varnish type of thing that you posted. I think I just saw that on, so talk about where you position yourself from that perspective.
I'm glad you asked that. I don't often get to talk about that. So thanks for asking. So the backstory is probably about 7 years ago, right when the influencers were taking off on Instagram outside of dentistry. I was like, I was on my LinkedIn profile and I'm like, it's time to update a little bit. I wonder what would happen if I put the word dental in front of influencer. And I'm like, dental influencer. I'm like, either I'm really cheesy and it's not going to work, or it's going to work. And so it's been a wild ride. I mean, even since then, but this is what I tell, when product and service companies come to me and say, hey, Melissa, can you promote our product? I'll say, okay, first let's step back and see what your goals are. Do you want to use me as an influencer, or do you want to use me as a traditional key opinion leader or thought leader? I am both. They are completely separate things, like you were mentioning, completely separate things. Separate target audiences, separate ways of doing things. Even a lot of influencers, dental or not, they don't get out in person. They have no in-person presence. They don't know how to speak on a stage. They don't know how to give a proper handshake. Like, this is dating me now, right? But many influencers are kind of that route, and so it's a very interesting thing to call myself an influencer in dentistry. The thing that I do want to kind of designate for anyone who's wondering the difference between a key opinion leader, thought leader, and an influencer, the method of marketing is different. So followers want to love, they want to have an emotional commitment, attachment to an influencer, and they don't necessarily care if the influencer is the expert. And that's one of the biggest differences between influencer campaigns and a traditional thought leader, key opinion leader campaign where I am the expert as a thought leader, where my clinical license gives me that credibility. And in that case, followers of a KOL, they want to learn from the expert versus they want to fall in love with an Instagram influencer. So for me, those are the two different distinct paths of what, and some companies will use me for both. Some will say, okay, we want the full thing. We want you as a KOL on the stage speaking on our behalf. But then we also want those traditional Instagram reel and, photos as well. So they'll try to use me for both. So it's a very interesting thing right now. I feel like everyone and their mother is like, oh yes, I'm an influencer, and that's good. But when you break it down to different marketing campaigns, they are distinctly different.
So I live in South Florida, and in my neighborhood, there is a true Instagram star. So she, no joke, she has 2.5 million followers, and she's 27 years old, beautiful woman, and she gets paid buku bucks to show off her assets, okay? Because she does it in a nice way. All of that, but she gets paid by diamond companies to show diamonds on her fingers. It's amazing what she's developed. So that to me is a influencer, not a key opinion leader. Okay, so that's why I was curious your thoughts on things, because she's definitely an influencer because she creates the reels and the stories and all this other stuff about the products that she's getting paid to promote. And look, if you're Kim Kardashian, they pay like $1 million to put one reel up there. It's crazy because you have so many people that see it. It's just that boggles my mind with that, because it's a much bigger reach than we have as dentists. So I was just curious your suggestions on that. So I want to switch gears now, and I want to talk about brand strategy for dental practices in this case. Okay, so I think a lot of dentists they open up a practice, but they don't know what their brand is. So people reach out to me and says, Len, what should I name my practice? Or how do I develop a logo? What should I have in my logo? Look, even when I came up with Supercharge, my first logo had a tooth in there. I didn't have to have a tooth in there, but that's it was like, that's what you think about when you think about dentistry, is you have a tooth in it. So I'm curious, where do you see where we are? Where do you see the future of brand strategy for dental practices?
Yeah, for dental practices, it has changed 180 degrees. So when I first started 20 years ago, that would have been early 2000s, right? It was when dental practices were first having their websites. And they were like, we're an amazing dental practice. We have a website. It's cookie cutter. It's generic. There's stock photos everywhere. But this is our website and we're proud of it, right? Like that was back then. And that was around the same time when it was just the traditional thing to do for the dental practice name to be named after Dr. Len Tao, Dr. Harry Potter and Associates, right? Like it was very dentist-centric back then. And so you'd walk in and you'd see all the diplomas on the walls and all the certifications on the walls, giving credibility to the dentist. But now, and especially with the younger generations, anyone 40 and below, it's going to sound really bad.
Don't care.
They don't care about the dentist at all. No, they just want to get good service and go home, right? My daughter, she's 7. She broke her arm last month. And so we were in countless, doctor visits and hospitals. And I had no freaking clue who was coming to me in scrubs to take care of my kids. It was somebody every hour, right? I'm like, are they the RN? Are they actually a doctor? Are they the physician? Are they just, an orderly? I have no idea. And that's how our patients see us in the dental practice. Even if they see me as the hygienist, they think most hygienists are assistants, right? Even anytime they see a guy in scrubs, they think the guy is the dentist, right? So it's like they don't care who is in the scrubs behind the mask as long as the service gets done and gets done well. And as long as they feel like they can trust that dental practice and the people behind the scrubs. So that is a big learning curve, I think, for dental practices. And it goes along with your online reviews too, right? It's building that brand, that good in-person and virtual presence for the dental practice is really where it's going to hone in over the next 5 years.
I actually had a dentist just post in my Facebook group, Raving Patients. He's a new practice. Should you worry about branding himself or branding the practice? I was like, no, you brand the practice, because that's what people are going to be looking for. Yes, they know you as a doctor, but you have to make your practice stand out from everything else. So I definitely agree with you that it's all about branding the practice and making sure that you stick out in a good way from your competitors.
Even if you're the biggest celebrity influencer dentist out there, you're not going to make money off of being an influencer. You probably won't even get many new patients through that. It's just how it is. You're just a celebrity, right? So you still have to work to get patients to your dental practice. Everyone coming out of dental school right now thinks that they need to be the dentist or some kind of like very big influencer dentist. And it's just not the case. That it doesn't work. Yeah.
So, you're active on social media. You have a very good following across all the different channels. For someone who's just starting out, or someone that's older and looking to get into these to attract a younger audience, where do you put the must-haves? I think it's pretty obvious, but I want you to say it. Where do you think a dentist has to be this day and age? And I want to make it very clear. You have to have people follow you in order to actually have any reach at all. And that's a tough part as it is. People aren't just going to look at you online like that. You have to have a following, or you have to create that following. But what sites do you think someone should focus on from like most important down to least important?
So it depends who they want to attract. If I am a dentist and I have a very quirky personality, then heck, showcase that personality on TikTok and you will go places, right? But if you feel like you're not a camera person, or you're like, what would I do? Then that is your sign right there to just, hold back on yourself on social media and promote the actual dental practice. And the biggest thing that I see these days is dental practices, they'll push out the before and after pictures of the cosmetic cases that they've done or the tooth that they've redone. They'll put a patient testimonial on their social media, and that's fine. That's all well and good. But we're very us-centric as dental professionals. And sometimes I think we forget for dental practices that we need to be patient-centric. We need to be posting what they want to see. They don't want to be reminded that they don't have perfect teeth. They don't want to see a before and after picture of teeth. They want to see you and your team goofing off on Friday afternoon. And, whatever that means, a picture is worth 1,000 words these days. And if you can just get some candid pictures of your team having fun with themselves, with the community, with patients in the dental practice, HIPAA compliant, of course, then that is what will really elevate the dental practice brand on social media, no matter what platform you're on. But right now, I would say Instagram is where to go if you want the younger generations. If you want the older generations, go to Facebook. And TikTok only if you're really quirky and have things to say.
I couldn't survive on TikTok if I had a practice still. I definitely, Instagram and Facebook were where I was. Instagram, again, the visuals are great, showing before and after stuff, showing you how you can change them. Look, there's a plastic surgeon I know that has 22 million plus followers, and he is the quirkiest guy in the world. And he has people travel all over the world because of his Instagram following online. And that's terrific. I think that's amazing that you can build that type of following on there. He doesn't really use it from a influencer status perspective. He really does it to attract people to come into his office, which I think is a really interesting way of doing it. So, I'm aware of all this stuff because I travel to all these dental meetings and even plastic surgery meetings now. So I meet people at these events. I'm like, I can't believe what you created for yourself. It's pretty amazing. Similar to what the dentist does, Ben the dentist. So I know we talked about dental practices and we really talked a little bit about dental professionals, but not as much. So if somebody wants to focus on them, okay, what is your recommendation for branding strategies for the professionals themselves?
I think the hardest and the most important thing to figure out is the foundation of what your message is. Where do you want to be in 10 years? What's that message in the next 10 years that's going to get you there? Whether it's you want to be a speaker or just a really kick-ass clinician or an expert in something in the clinical field. So without that, no matter what you do, you'll be floundering. You'll be spending hours and hours on social media. You'll be spending hours and hours maybe on the stage or doing webinars. But if your goal isn't clear, then you're not going to get anywhere. So that's usually when I'm coaching one-on-one with clinicians or industry leaders that want to grow in this area. That's the hardest thing to really find an answer to. Because if you don't have that answer, you can't grow. And so other than that, once you have that answer, then the biggest thing, and it's the same for dental practices and any kind of industry leader, you need to balance your in-person presence with your virtual presence. I think for so long, mostly because social media is relatively new, right? It's relatively new, last 15 years. We think that social media is our best friend and that it's everything for us. And we forget, especially now through COVID too, we forget that we actually need to make an effort in person. So you and I are at pretty much every single dental conference out there, as many as we can get to. And building that in-person presence along with that virtual presence and making sure you're consistent, you're the same person in both of these, that's what's going to get the thought leader to growing or the professional to the next level, being consistent. Len, how many people do we meet at these events where you're like, oh, that person looks familiar? And as soon as they say their name, you think of their profile picture and you're like, holy cow, they don't look like their profile picture. Their profile picture is 10 years old, right? Right. Or they come across on social media in their written language as, maybe snippy or maybe like dramatic, but then in person, they're perfectly fine, right? It's making sure that we can combine those two to be consistent. That is the key to anyone being successful in the next 10 years, 15 years.
Couldn't agree more with you. Be real, be yourself, be authentic, and everything else will follow. I'm 100% believer in that. So, and I love going to trade shows. I love the speaking part. I speak a ton. I love the connecting. I love the interacting and the networking. Those are really important things that you need to have in our position. Meet the businesses or meet the manufacturers, meet the dentists who are following us. And that's what we do. That's why we do what we do. So, switching gears again, I wanted to discuss technology. I'm curious your thoughts on the future of technology in the dental industry. Obviously you have, because you work for Celerant and you work with Lou and stuff, you have your eye on some things or your ear on some things that may not be, available for people to use yet. So I'm curious your thoughts on where you think the future of technology in dentistry is.
So future of technology in dentistry, sure, I could say AI, but it's much, much bigger than AI, right? Like AI is all the craze. There's an AI war in dentistry right now. That's all the craze, but it's much bigger than AI. What I see coming down the line is the clinical practice of dentistry, as well as all of healthcare, is becoming preventive based instead of disease based. And that's going to take some time to change in dentistry. It already is in the rest of healthcare. But with the technology aiding the prevention, things like 23andMe, salivary diagnostics, these are things that are going to shape the next generation of our patients. And so the things that I could tell you about that aren't even on the market right now are completely revolutionary for dentistry. There's a sealant material that's coming out next month, and it needs no etch, no light cure. And NASA uses it on their rocket ships to help with temperature control, like the outside of the rocket ships, right? So it's these materials, it's these revolutionary things that are coming down the line that dentistry doesn't even know what to do with yet because they're very prevention based. So for me, technology in dentistry, and it's not just because I'm a hygienist, it's because I see the consumer wants prevention now. They want to take hold of their health and figure out how can they prevent the disease that's been passed down from their great grandma to their grandma to their mom, right? And they don't want to pass it. Well, here's my story. I don't want to pass my high cholesterol to my kids, right? Like, so what can I do now to prevent that? And I think that's completely a mirror image of what's happening in the rest of at least the consumer and the patient base right now too.
Interesting. Where do you think, do you see scanning continuing to grow? I know there's some products that, even from a probing perspective, being a hygienist, that they can actually record. And I know there's some older technology that can do the same thing supposedly, but this is a scanner that basically has a probe tip that can go into the sulcus and actually measure pocket depth to give a more consistent result there. What are your feelings on stuff like that?
That's beautiful. I mean, when I'm in the practice, I don't want a perio chart. I don't want to probe because it is so subjective. It is so subjective based on user error, based on the patient. And so to have a definitive computer, sure, it's a robot, right? If we're going to call it a robot, like taking my job. But if we can get consistent in the measurements and in what we're doing clinically and in the data that we're collecting, then that means we can find better outcomes for the patients. And so perio charting is one of these things. I'm like, I don't give it the time of day. Like, it's sure if you drop into a 9mm pocket, it's obviously something's wrong, but there's so many subjectivity nuances with perio charting. So I'm happy that something like that is coming down the line to automate it. That makes me so happy.
All right. I thought you'd like that one. So
yeah, I do like that. Yes.
And what are you, I'm curious what you're most looking forward to in the future. I mean, obviously I'm not clinical anymore. You're part-time clinical, if that much. We're not on the front end necessarily. You have, because you're an influencer on that technology side. But what are you most looking forward to over the next 5 years in dentistry, assuming that you're clinical still?
Mm-hmm. I'm most looking forward to having more touch points with patients so that we can be more consistent in the care we give and the messaging we give. And 10 years ago, I would have called it access to care. Let's increase access to care for patients. But now that's so typecast with public health that if I say, let's improve access to care for a general dentist or a DSO, they're going to be like, well, we're not public health. So I'll call it now patient touch points, virtual care, teledentistry, all these, remote patient, all these apps that we can see it from a provider standpoint and the patient has access to from their standpoint, like a Fitbit, right? Those things are what's going to help the patient understand that the importance of, a cavity and what that can do to your body and why they're actually preventable. It still kills me to know that patients think that they just get cavities from their mom and dad. I'm like, no, wait, huh? Well, maybe a little bit, but no.
You don't brush your teeth. You don't floss your teeth. or they're pregnant and they said that their baby took the calcium from their teeth and they lost their teeth because that's not why you lose your teeth, because you're pregnant. So yes, unfortunately that we hear a lot of stories like that. So you mentioned access to healthcare. You mentioned teledentistry. So I want to segue into the few minutes that we have left on the content side. I want to segue into something that you had mentioned at the very beginning, the National Mobile and Teledentistry Conference, which is a conference that you have now. I think it's going into year 5 now. I was fortunate to be at last year's event in Frisco, Texas. Is going to be there again this year. I think March 1st and March 2nd. Is that the dates?
That's right.
Okay. So can you just give the listeners an overview of that event, and what you've kind of created over the last 5 years with it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of my very good friends, Sonia Dunbar, and I were co-founders of this event. And the goal, 6-7 years ago, when we first came up with the idea, the goal was to say, hey, there's many ways we can care for our patients outside of the brick and mortar. What are those ways? Let's start to educate the dental community on that. And it was right when so it would include portable and mobile care, right? At that point, she and I were both practicing clinicians in mobile organizations that had mobile and portable care. And it was at that point, too, where teledentistry was coming around. And so we said, we're going to lump teledentistry in with this because, again, it's a mindset change for the practice owner to think, oh, I can still care for my patients, even though they're not in my clinical op right now, even though they're not in my chair, and I can get reimbursed for that. Oh, okay. So we lumped all that together. So, many people that come to the conference are both providing mobile care and virtual care because they go hand in hand. But we have a good group that comes just to learn about teledentistry, just to learn how can I, implement telehealth in my dental practice? What does that do for the dental practice? What does that do for my patients? And then some that come and just say, hey, we just want to provide concierge dentistry. We want it to be high end. We live in an urban area. This will be perfect. So they'll come from one or the other or both. But it's really thinking outside the box. And it's one of my favorite groups of people, Len, because it's, yes, it's some public health folks. Yes, it's some DSOs. Yes, it's some private practice and specialists. It's like this entire group that would never get together. And you know this now that you have your event, but it's a group that would have never gotten together, right, prior to this. And now they have a reason to come together and talk. And that's when we can really see change in an industry and advancement too.
And I guess talking about the event, you also created the Denobi Awards, which is an award that I am fortunate. I've actually been nominated twice in a row, 2 years in a row for that. I think it's 3 years old, right? It's 3 years now.
4 years old. 4 years.
This will be the 4th year now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the last 2 years I've been nominated. So 2 out of the first 3 I was nominated for. I was able to attend last year when I was at the meeting. Great event that you put on. So why don't you talk a little bit about the Denobi Awards as well?
So again, Sonia and I, we want to make an impact in dentistry, and we feel like, hey, if we don't, who's going to, right? Besides Lentel, he'll make an impact. So a while ago, we did a review of all the awards programs in dentistry, and most of them were only for dentists or only for lifetime achievement awards. And so we looked at each other and we were like, well, nobody wants to win an award when they're old and gray. They need to be honored in the moment when they're doing good things, when they're making a difference in the here and now. So Sonia and I launched Denobi Awards. It's got nothing to do with mobile dentistry, teledentistry, although it is hosted on the final end of our conference. And so it launched as just a U.S. program where anyone could be nominated as long as you had a role in dentistry. So founders, educators, you don't have to be a clinician. You can be brand new. This can be year one. You can be a student. And what ended up happening was there was a lot of outside interest outside of the U.S. And so each year now we probably have 2 or 3 winners from outside of the U.S. that fly in to the gala on in the first week in March. And so we have 10 individual winners that win and then 1 dental team that wins as well. And this is our way of saying, hey, dental teams, you deserve honor too for working together, for doing good in your community. So it's really the unsung heroes in dentistry, Len.
Yeah, that was great. I thought it was a great event. You did a great job with that. So we'll find out more information about the National Mobile Teledentistry Conference when we're done. So I want to switch gears. So we're going to switch over to a very fun section for me, which is the lightning round. It's all business-related questions. As you know, as I told you beforehand, I want you to answer them very quickly. We'll see what we come up with here, okay?
Okay.
Nothing inappropriate if you haven't heard this before, so just so you know. All right. What kind of shower ideas do you get? So ideas in the shower.
Oh my gosh, I'm always talking to myself in the shower. It's so embarrassing. It's okay. So I do a lot of writing, copywriting, journal writing. That's when I come up with my writing in the shower.
That's good. Do you believe there is some sort of pattern or formula to becoming successful?
No. I would say believe in yourself. I would say, there's so many cliche things that you can say, but I think the biggest thing is you have to have a drive to be successful. And wherever that comes from, it's not one formula. It could be out of struggle, out of pain. It could be, because money's been handed to you. I don't know, but you have to have that drive and you have to keep going.
Okay. What are 3 adjectives that describe your strengths?
Quirky, out of the box, and the third one would be, I'd say colorful. It's kind of like once people think they can predict me, Lynn, I'll do the other thing, right?
I think I know the answer to this one. I'm curious. If you were to write a book about yourself, what would you name it? Something came to my mind right away.
You want to tell me yours and then I'll tell you mine?
The Tooth Girl.
There you go. I like that.
Perfect. That's your handle. That's perfect.
Yeah, that's my handle. That's good. We'll just leave it at that because that's what I'm going to have to think about. And then I'll let you know.
It's a tough question. So what eats up most of your time that you'd like to change?
I think operational tasks. I'm a big picture person, and even just the little things in life and business and in life, that eats up my time.
Okay. Describe Mondays for you in one word.
Mondays. Insane.
Well, you usually don't travel on Mondays. You're probably more of a mom on Mondays than anything else.
Right. Kids go back to school, email catch up. Insane. Today is Monday, by the way.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it is. Do you have a favorite business podcast?
It's TEDx. Anything TEDx. I mean, it's short and sweet. It's perfect.
What book have you read multiple times?
Oh, The Tipping Point. Malcolm Gladwell. Favorite book ever. Love the guy. Yep.
Do you make a to-do list every day, weekly, or when?
Every day. And then I rewrite it every day. I like to cross things off and then rewrite it. One of those.
If you can wave a magic wand and change 3 things in the world today, what would it be?
I would make people understand how to listen to one another. I would make people understand that they have a voice and that they need to project that voice. And I would have people hug more trees. Literally, physically hug more trees. They'd spend time doing that.
Okay, that's good. I like that. 2 more questions. What has been your most satisfying moment in business?
Looking back and thinking, oh, I did that? I never understand the impact I'm making until retrospect. And there have been a few times this past year where I'm like, oh, that was me. Oh, good. Pat myself on the back.
Yeah, if I was asked that question, I've done so much in my career. I'm only 49 years old. Excuse me. Sorry, I lied. I'm only 50 years old. I did a lot of it before 49. That's what I was going to say. But if I look back, I'm sure it's going to be having my first event at work. You were there. My first event was like went out without a hitch. I'm not even sure I can repeat it in year 2. So,
down from here, man.
Yeah. And last question, and this could be business or personal. If you could not live without one subscription, which one would that be?
White noise machine. I know it sounds out of the box, but I cannot sleep without white noise. But it's got to be the right one, right? There's so many different types. So it's got to be my white noise subscription on my phone.
Have you heard of a product called Hatch?
No.
They make an alarm clock that has all this white noise built in. You may want to check it out. It's an alarm clock called Hatch. It's like $200, but you can buy it on Amazon. It's a great has all different lighting in it. So check it out. All right, Melissa, that was you being awesome. So if anybody has any information about you or how you can help them, or they want more information about the NMTC meeting, how do they go about getting that?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you can always DM me on LinkedIn or Instagram. Those are my 2, where I hang out the most. You can also visit my website, melissakturner.com, and there's a contact widget there that'll go to my team.
And if anybody wants further information about NMTC?
If you want more information about the Teledentistry conference, you go to nmdconference.com, or you can just Google it.
nmdconference.com. Perfect. You were awesome, guys. If you like this episode, please tell your friends. Please tell your colleagues. Please subscribe to the episode. Please review us. All things you can do to help us out. Melissa's obviously a big key opinion leader. There's so many things she did that we didn't even talk about today. So if you want to reach out to her, get some information about what she's involved with, you're a manufacturer listening and says, I want Melissa to be an influencer for me, reach out to Melissa. And as I always end my episodes, remember, your reputation matters. Until the next episode, Melissa, thank you so much for joining me, and we'll talk to everyone soon.
Thanks, Len.